Hi, I'm Jeff Saltzman, the CEO of Org Vitality. I want to take some time today to discuss sustaining change in an organization over the long term. So far in other videos, we have discussed getting managers to use their employee survey data to affect change and how to create the organizational conditions that helps to motivate them to do so. But there's also a bigger picture to be considered if there's a desire for a long-term organizational level change impact. There are some common elements to movie making and organizational change. In both instances, you have to know what you're driving towards, and you have to keep the plot line moving forward in the right direction. When I start a change effort, my first question is, what's the goal? What are we striving for here? What's the vision? And then, is that a vision everyone can get behind? Is that a goal that everyone together would say is worth striving for? Or is it a goal that disproportionately rewards some over others? For instance, a substantially increased sales target as a goal may reward salespeople and management, but may have no beneficial impact whatsoever on those executing on the work, other than more work. However, we know that a sense of forward momentum in an organization, a sense of improvement, can have a large positive impact on employee attitudes, even if the starting position is relatively poor. And we know without a mutually beneficial specific goal or end state in mind, change can wander. It can start, it can stop, it can dissipate over time as people take a this too shall pass kind of outlook on the changes being implemented. Or even worse, it can devolve into chaos as people implement different visions regarding where the organization is going. Over the long term, how do you accomplish continuous organizational improvement, keeping that forward momentum and making sure you're on the right path? In order to keep action happening, you must move towards the kind of actions an individual manager can take, as well as evaluating the bigger picture. Let's break it down to a few key elements based on what we've seen over the years. First, quite simply, you have to have the right butts in the right seats. It can be a hard lesson to learn, but there have been numerous times when an organization has shown tremendous improvements in critical elements to their success. And when you probe on it, the answer is there was a change in management. Now, you can work with some managers until you're blue in the face, but in reality, they may simply not be willing or capable of changing. A survey process itself is usually not the best method to use to go about changing management, but there are usually many other signs and measures that something is amiss. There was one client, for instance, that should a manager not achieve certain targets on their survey for 3 administrations in a row, they were moved out of management. But the survey is usually corroborating evidence rather than the mechanism for removal. The survey is also a measure as to whether any of the changes are helping to improve the organizational culture and attitudes. Second, you want to make sure you're rewarding the right things. Your survey results can indicate that you need to improve on X, Y, or Z. But if X, Y, or Z are not supported or rewarded, or even worse, if the opposite of X, Y, Z is rewarded, change is simply not going to happen. You get the behavior that you reward. For instance, too often you see cultures that extol customer service, but then measure how long a customer service takes in responding to customers. Managers are rewarded when their folks have the shortest interactions with customers, rather than being rewarded for successfully solving the issue. Doctors and dentists are often rewarded for quickly performing a procedure, not on outcomes. In dental school, for instance, a portion of the student's grade is the amount of time spent doing a specific procedure. These are structural issues. What's important is rewards must align with the culture you're trying to create. The big question is the organization rewarding those things that support the culture they say they want, not the culture they have, but the culture they espouse. If you're rewarding things that are not aligned with the culture you desire, it may be time to revisit the reality of your cultural vision. An honest cultural statement will go further than one that describes a fantasy to your staff and your customer, for that fantasy erodes your credibility. Once you're sure you have defined the culture you need and want Step one is to ensure appropriate messaging to the staff about that culture. These are items that have to do with how the organization is describing itself to the employees and their role in it. They deal with clarity regarding what the organization is about, how it will operate, and how each person contributes to delivering on those goals. Importantly, are the organizational communications delivering that message consistent throughout all levels in the organization? Are policies and practices in line with that message? Is it clear what each person's role is in support of the message, especially the managers who you need to deliver on the actions which support the message? And during times of change, is it clear how the organization is changing, what the expected benefits of the change will be, and what each person's role in the change effort is? Step two is to ensure that performance aligns with the message. Ask yourself, are people getting what they need to be able to deliver on the message, to get the job done? Performance should be thought of in the broadest sense, including such things as organizational structure, teamwork, communications, decision-making, training, equipment, resources, processes, and procedures. Well, you get the idea. It's the big performance. Is everything in place that the employee needs to be able to work the way that the organization intends for them to work? If employees don't have the skills to deliver on the message, you will need to train in those skills or bring in the talent with the needed skills. Likewise, if resources such as tools, information, the authority to make decisions are lacking, you will need to ensure those are in place. Step three is to give the staff a sense of future, making sure people they feel like they have a future with the organization, a sense of belonging, and very importantly, making sure they feel valued by the organization. Ask yourself, or better yet, ask the employees, is there a compelling reason for them to stick around for the long term? Organization cultures, however, are not binary, right? Messaging doesn't either exist or not exist. Performance doesn't either exist or not exist. The same thing for a sense of future. Every organization will have varying degrees of each of these things being present on a sliding scale. Those most successful at implementing change and keeping their employees engaged during change are those that are strong in all three areas during the process of change. For instance, one client had employees who viewed the organization positively in all three of these areas: message, performance, and future. And as an outcome, that group had employee engagement scores in the mid-80s in terms of percent favorable. Within that same client, those who did not view the organization as clearly messaging, as providing what was needed to get the job done and a sense of a future, their employee engagement scores were in the low teens. These three things make a huge difference in terms of organizational culture. Sometimes change efforts impacting mission critical processes or change efforts involve critical processes that can carry with it terrible consequences if the change effort were to fail. Failure, for instance, when the process is one that protects the public safety or puts the life of an employee at risk, failure is often simply just not an option. In those cases, a change process that has multiple small steps with assurance checkpoints along the way, confirming that the change is working and can be successfully implemented. Another approach is to implement the change effort in an offline fashion, running two processes in parallel, and to implement the change in the real world only after there's assurance that the newly changed process is functioning as planned. Change is a never-ending state of being, as there is no such thing as a perfect organization. Only a vision of perfection that one can strive for, only to find that it's somewhat constantly out of reach. Thanks for your time.